far from the woods there lived a little chipmunk and her grandmother, Snowshoe Rabbit. Chipmunk was too small to hunt, so she walked through the woods and picked berries. Her grandmother was afraid to let Chipmunk go alone, but there was no other way, because her grandmother could hardly use her legs anymore. Her grandmother told her, "Take the basket and pick 12 berries. Do not eat any until we have thanked the Great Spirit who has sent us the berries." So off Chipmunk went. It was not long until she found a bush just loaded with ripe berries. She carefully picked 12 juicy-looking berries. She was so anxious to pick the berries that some of them fell to the ground. When she put her hand down to search for the berries under the brush, her arm was smeared with berry juice. The temptation was too great, and she began licking her arm. And Chipmunk's mouth watered. How sweet and juicy they are. I will eat some more. My grandmother will never know. She then climbed up onto the bush and started eating all the berries she could hold. While she was in the bush eating berries, Chipmunk heard steps on the ground below. She looked down. Standing under the bush was one of the 4 owl sisters. A big basket was on Owl's back, and in the basket were many little people the owl had stolen. The owl sisters would travel from camp to camp stealing little ones. Whenever they got hungry, they ate 1 or 2 of them. Chipmunk was frightened, but she knew that Owl could not reach her. Owl said, "Your father wants you." Chipmunk answered, "I have no father. He died long ago." Owl thought for a moment. Then she said, "Your mother wants you. She wants you to come home." "My mother died many snows ago," Chipmunk replied. Owl thought for a moment. "Your grandmother wants you at home right away." Chipmunk could believe that. She was silent for a little while, and then she said, "I will not come down unless you hide your eyes." Owl replied, "All right, I will hide my eyes. See, I have them covered." And Owl covered her face with her hands, but all the time she was peeking through her claw fingers. Chipmunk really thought that Owl's eyes were covered, but she wasn't taking any chances of being fooled. Instead of dropping to the ground, she jumped from the top of the bush. She jumped over Owl's head, and as she went sailing over, Owl lifted her hand to grab her, but she only scratched Chipmunk with 3 of her fingers, making long stripes down Chipmunk's back. But the little girl got away. Since that time, the chipmunks have carried the marks of Owl's claws. Chipmunk ran, and Owl followed as fast as she could, but her basket was very heavy. When Chipmunk reached home, all she could say was, "Hide me, Owl is chasing me." Snowshoe Rabbit didn't know what to do. Then she heard a voice. It came from a tree. It was the voice of Meadowlark, who was singing, hide her in the basket." Quickly, Grandmother put Chipmunk in the basket, and knowing Meadowlark was a gossip and a tattler, she took off her necklace of white polished bones and threw it to the singer. She hoped that the present would please Meadowlark and keep her from telling where Chipmunk was hidden. Meadowlark put on the necklace and flew away. Soon Owl came along, saying, "Where is the child I am hunting?" Grandmother pretended that she had not seen Chipmunk. Owl began to look around. Her eyes looked everywhere. At last she turned to leave, but Meadowlark flew back to the tree near the teepee. Meadowlark sang, "I will tell you if you pay me, I will tell you if you pay me, where she is, where she is." Owl hurried outside and threw a bright vest to the tattler, who put it on and sang, "In the basket, take her out, in the basket, take her out." Then Meadowlark flew away. The necklace and the vest she received for tattling she wears to this day. Owl pushed the grandmother aside and snatched Chipmunk out of the basket. Little ones are the best," she said. Owl went away and put Chipmunk in her basket. In a little while the weeping grandmother heard a familiar voice. Meadowlark was singing again from the tree. Her song was, "Coyote knows, Coyote knows." Owl had not walked far when she met Coyote. "Owl, I like to eat little ones too. Let us travel together and we will have better luck finding them." Owl was pleased. She thought that the two of them traveling together and helping each other would be stronger than all the monsters in the world. Pretty soon, Coyote said, "I am getting hungry. Here is a good place to make a fire. Let us stop here and roast those you are carrying in the basket." Owl was hungry too. She set her basket on the ground. Coyote asked her to let the small people out so they could do the work of gathering wood for the fire. Coyote bossed them around, talking in a cruel way. That was for Owl's ears. But to each little one he whispered, "Get the wood that has the most pitch. Do that if you wish to return to your people." Coyote's words made the small people work hard. Soon there was a roaring fire. "This is to be an important feast," Coyote told Owl. "You should paint your face, paint it with charcoal and rub it with pitch. The pitch will make the charcoal stay on. Your arms should be painted the same way." Coyote's attention flattered Owl. She let him help her to prepare for the feast. She painted her arms with charcoal and then smeared them with pitch, and she painted her face the same way. "Now let us roast them," Owl said eagerly. Coyote shook his head and said, "No, not yet. Wait until the wood burns to red coals. That pitch smoke would spoil the taste. But we can do something while we are waiting. We can dance. While we are having a good time, the little people can gather roasting sticks." Coyote told the little ones to hurry and gather roasting sticks, and he and Owl began to dance. They danced and danced. Owl grew tired. She wanted to stop. Coyote urged, "Do not stop so soon. You are a good dancer. I like to see you dance." Owl danced harder and harder until she staggered. Then, as if in play, Coyote shoved her and she fell. Coyote laughed and Owl laughed, and she got up and danced again. Coyote danced beside her, and when she got close to the fire, he pushed her right into the flames. He called the little ones, and they pinned her down with roasting sticks. Coyote said, "You must cover her up and go quickly, because Owl has 3 sisters, and they will come looking for her. You will have to hide. I will wait for them to come here." The 3 sisters followed Owl's tracks to Coyote's camp, but they did not see him watching them. They found the place where the big fire had been. They dug around until one sister said, "Our oldest sister left something here. She cooked it and left it for us to eat." While they were eating, they found their sister's claw. The youngest Owl's eyes grew big. "Ooh, we have done something bad. We have eaten our own sister. This claw is her finger." They stopped eating and started to weep. They cried and cried until tears would come no more. They went down to the spring to drink. Coyote called to his power, and when their faces touched the water, their teeth fell out and changed into little ducks. And their eyes popped out and landed in a tree and became the harmless owl of today. This change was Coyote's wish. Listen, listen, my children. I will tell you one more story. It will be the story of Coyote and the Frost Giant. It was not until Frost Giant met Coyote that it became the Frost we know now. I will tell you why. After a long trip in which he had many adventures, Coyote started home, back to his wife and children. Instead of following the trail, he decided to take a new path and see new places. While walking one day, he saw a great river before him with a single teepee on the other side. No one was in sight. A dark cloud seemed to hang over the place. A long white pole stuck out of the top of the teepee. On the pole hung white pieces of buckskin. "I wonder who lives there," thought Coyote. He noticed a canoe on the river. He wanted to find out who lived in the teepee, so he called loudly. He called several times before he saw a giant man come out. The man wore only a breechcloth. His face was painted a brilliant red, and his long black hair hung loosely about his shoulders. He walked to the water's edge and looked across at Coyote. Coyote yelled, "Hey there, old man! Get me across on your canoe and hurry, for I have no time to lose." The man on the other side stood still for a few moments. Then he turned around and went back into his teepee. Almost at once, Coyote saw the pieces of buckskin on the pole move. A cold breeze sprang up. Dark clouds appeared and it began to snow. Coyote stood shivering from the cold. He looked for shelter but found none. Seeing a huge rock close by, he went and sat down behind it. In a short time, he felt his hands and feet grow numb. He got up and walked around, hoping this would keep him warm, but it was no use. He walked until he was tired. He fell down and he was too weary to get up again. While he lay there, the spirit of death came to take him to another world. Later, Meadowlark found Coyote. He knew the frost giant and his way of killing and eating people. He knew that soon Coyote would die. Meadowlark set out to tell Coyote's brother Fox. Fox was the only person who had the power to bring Coyote back to life. When Fox heard what had happened, he knew he had to save his brother. He dressed himself in his fur robe and left that night. When Fox found his brother, he carried him out of the giant's sight. Fox stood over Coyote and called upon the Great Spirit to help him. He then stepped over Coyote 3 times and brought his brother back to life. Coyote said, I certainly had a nice nap. I want to see Frost Giant." Fox knew that it would be useless to argue with Coyote. As soon as he came to the river again, Coyote called for his power. Instantly, a pair of warm moccasins and a warm blanket appeared. He put them on and went to the edge of the river. He called just as he had done the day before. Coyote shouted again, "Hey there, old man, get me across on your canoe and hurry, for I have no time to lose." "Sounds like the same one I killed yesterday and could not find this morning," the giant said to himself. The giant pulled the strings that made the pieces of buckskin move, and the cold came. He sat down to wait for morning to come. An extra wave of cold was sent to be sure that Coyote would be killed. As soon as Coyote felt the cold coming, he sat down under a tree. His clothes were so warm that he did not feel the cold. Early the next morning, he saw the frost giant coming across in his canoe. Coyote stretched himself out under the tree. He closed his eyes so that he looked like he was dead. The frost giant came to Coyote as soon as he landed. He was about to eat him when Coyote again called upon his power, and another person appeared some distance away. The giant thought, "That other fellow looks nice and fat. I had better kill him first, and then I'll have 2 people to eat instead of 1. The giant smacked his lips as he started toward the new person. Coyote took a peek and saw the giant going the other way. Jumping up, he ran down to the river and got into the canoe. The giant heard the noise and ran down to the river, but Coyote was already out of reach. "I will catch the other person anyway," the giant thought. Turning around, he saw nothing. He had lost both of them. He stood there, not knowing what to do. Finally, he sat on a rock to think. Coyote crossed the river safely and ran into the teepee. The teepee was empty, except for a bow and some arrows and skeletons hanging down from the sides. He saw the strings hanging from the pole on the top, and he pulled them. He sat down and waited for the cold to come. "It does not seem to be getting any colder," he said. "I'll look out and see if it is snowing yet." When Coyote stuck his head out, the air was so cold that he almost froze. After that, he stayed inside. The next day, he looked out and saw that it was nice and warm again. He went across the river in a canoe and found the frost giant frozen to death. "This will teach you never to eat people again," he told the frost giant. Coyote went on his way, satisfied that the world was rid of another enemy.